We worship a God who waits for things, and so you and I should be people who also wait, right? Advent is a season of waiting, and so I just wanted to reflect on that. God waits, and so we should be people who wait as well, and this season does that for us. Looking at a couple of ways that God waits for things. First of all, God waited and does not come immediately as Jesus Christ. He does not come and become a human person immediately in history. He waits for thousands of years in the Old Testament through awful leaders, horrible sins, giant failures of his people, horrible persecutions of his people, famines, death. God waited in the midst of all of that. And of course, we're not going to accuse God of inactively waiting, right? It's not that kind of waiting. God was very much at work in both holding everything in existence in the first place and allowing everything to exist, active through an infinite number of interventions, through the prophets and through kings and through small people, unknown people who will never be recorded in the acts of history, but we will appreciate one day when we get to heaven. God is active in ways that we won't know about until the end of time. But God did not come as Jesus Christ until, as the Bible puts it, the world arrived at the fullness of time. The second way that God waits, God also waits in the fact that he has not come back to wrap the world up yet. Through horrible persecutions, great sufferings, awful wars, horrible sins, the curtain still remains up on this world. And the world continues, and God waits for the fullness of time. Again, God doesn't sit on the sidelines. It's not an inactive waiting. God is very much at work and holding again everything in existence, active through an infinite number of interventions and grace and through you and I. Most of the ways in which God has been active since the coming of his Son are ways in which we won't know until the end of time. But God is waiting and has not returned in his fullness to bring things to its conclusion. We worship a God who waits, and so you and I should be people who wait. Waiting seems terrible, at least it does to me, and I get the sense that it does to most other people too. No one else makes us wait or asks us to wait. Everyone else responds instantly. The grocery store opens a new checkout line if the person in front of you has too many groceries. Amazon will deliver your package today for $50. But God waits. In this season of Advent, in a special way, the church asks you and I to wait. A couple of things about this waiting then. Again, is it an inactive waiting? Absolutely not. Jesus says in the gospel today, what does he say? Stay awake. The readings are encouraging us to be vigilant. That's the type of waiting that we are called to. The type of waiting that God does. A vigilant waiting. Alertness to every single thing that is happening. Action and intervention when that is called for. And so the same for you and I. We wait, but we are alert, and we are still very much in action. This waiting, I think, to me is best lived and is probably best carried out in prayer. When we pray, it is the waiting of God. It is not the waiting to get in to see a doctor, aimless killing of time. Our contemplative prayer in Advent and always is sitting with the doctor. The waiting with him in prayer is what heals us and refines us. We worship a God who actively, alertly, lovingly, and vigilantly waits. This Advent, let us be people who also actively, alertly, lovingly, and vigilantly wait with him as well.